In this video, we are looking at the delusion. Delusion, and we are going to focus on the types. So as usual, we are starting with questions. So the first question I would like to ask is, what is the megalomania? What is megalomania? So the next question is, what is the nihilistic delusion? Nihilistic delusion. Then third one is, what is the delusion of persecution? So we'll find out the answers in this video and learn in detail. So the first, we're going to discuss about the delusion of control. So what is the delusion of control? It is nothing but a false belief. So it is nothing but a false belief that a person's will. So the person's will as well as thoughts as well as feelings. So the will, thoughts and the feelings, and they are being controlled by an external force. It is being controlled by an external force. This is nothing but the delusion of the control. Next we go to the delusion. So we are going to look at the delusion of the grandeur. So what is the delusion of the grandeur? It is aka known as the megalomania. Delusion of grandeur aka megalomania. It is nothing but an exaggerated conception. So it is nothing but an exaggerated conception. It's an exaggerated conception of one's own importance. It is exaggerated conception of one's own importance as well as power or identity. So it basically means that the individual is entitled, feels that he is superior to everyone. Next is the delusion of infidelity. So the delusion of infidelity, or we are looking at the morbid jealousy or the Othello syndrome. Othello syndrome. So here it is the infidelity, morbid jealousy, or the Othello syndrome. So it is nothing but a false belief. So everything, it is a false belief that one's own lover is unfaithful. So one's lover is unfaithful. This is the Othello syndrome. So it is also known as the pathological jealousy. Next, we look at the delusion of love. So delusion of love, aka the erotomania. So it is basically the false belief that another person is in love with them. So it is a false belief that they are in love with them. And there is a syndrome which needs to be known, that is a D. Liram Bult. So this is a syndrome need to be known. So in this syndrome, the woman believes that a man, so a woman feels a man usually who is older or superior or higher status, they are in love with her. They are in love with her. So this is nothing but the delusion of the Clara Bult. Next, where we look at the delusion of the misidentification. So the delusion of the misidentification. So the delusion of misidentification, there are two important ones. So firstly, there is a Capgras syndrome. So these are important. So Capgras syndrome is basically a familiar person has been replaced by an exact double. Familiar person has been replaced by a exact double. This is nothing but imposter. So feeling that a same person has been replaced by a double. Next is Fregoli syndrome. So in case of Fregoli syndrome, a person holds delusional belief that different people are in fact a single person. So what he feels is different people are a single person. and a person who changes his or appearance and is in disguise. So the mnemonic here is CIFD. So C is Capgras syndrome, and F, that is the food, is delicious. F and D. So F is nothing but Fregoli syndrome, and D is for the disguise. So this way it will be easier to remember. And here it is CI. So CI is nothing but in Capgras we deal with imposters. Who is an imposter? Is basically a familiar person being replaced by an exact double. So we're imposing as that person, so it is imposter. Fregoli syndrome means disguise. So you feel that different people are in fact the same person. This is in disguise. Next, we look at the nihilistic. So, what is nihilistic delusion? Nihilistic delusion is basically a false belief that one himself or the others in the world, they are non-existent. They are non-existent or about to end. When nihilistic delusions is accompanied by ideas concerning the bodily functions and bodily function failures. So, example, the putrefaction, the putrefaction of the intestine, and it is also known as the Cotard syndrome. Cotard syndrome. Cotard syndrome is nothing but the putrefaction of the intestine. Next, we go on to the delusion of the infestation. So, you're looking at the delusion of infestation. So, what is delusion of infestation? It is basically a false belief. It is a false belief, and false belief that one is infested with a small but visible organism. So you are infested with a small or a visible organism. And as a monosymptomatic delusion disorder, it is a monosymptomatic delusion disorder. So this is called as Ekbom syndrome. Ekbom syndrome. Next, we look at the delusion of persecution. Delusion of the persecution. So what is delusion of persecution? It is a most common delusion. It is a most common delusion. And there is a false belief of being harassed or persecuted. So you have false belief of being harassed or persecuted. Next, we are looking at the delusion of poverty. Delusion of poverty. So what does this deal with? The person strongly believes that they are financially poor. So the patient feels they are poor. So next we look at the delusion of reference. So delusion of reference. So in case of delusion of reference, there is a false belief that the behaviors of others has a particular unusual significance. So whatever others do, they are of some significance, usually of negative nature. The person, they may falsely feel that the others are talking about them. So in case others are talking, they feel they're talking only about them, only about them. And the example is the people on television are speaking to you. The people on television, TV are speaking to you, or the newspapers are speaking to you. So they are nothing but delusion of reference. Then we look at the delusion of self-accusation. Delusion of self-accusation. So what is delusion of self-accusation? There is a false feeling of the remorse and guilt. So there is false feeling of the remorse or the guilt. It is seen in case of the depression with the psychotic features. So there is depression along with the psychotic features. Psychotic features. So now we jump on to the answering our questions. So the first question we did was we asked is in case of the what is megalomania? So what is megalomania? Megalomania is also known as, it is aka the grandeur. So here the patient, the person, he feels superior to the others. There is exaggerated conception of one's own importance, the power, or the identity. So they are considered very superior compared to the others. Next one is the nihilistic delusion. So what is the nihilistic delusion? Second one we saw is the nihilistic. So nihilistic delusions. So what is nihilistic delusion? It is nothing but a false belief that oneself or the others or the world, that oneself or the others of the world is non-existent, or the others in the world, they are non-existent or about to end, everything is coming to an end. And this is when the nihilistic delusion is accompanied by ideas concerning the bodily function failures. The function failures. And example here is that the putrefaction of the intestine, and the syndrome which is associated is nothing but the Cotard, okay, syndrome. The last question we asked was, what is the delusion of persecution? So it is simple, delusion of the persecution. So delusion of persecution basically means that the individual feels that they are going to be persecuted. So this is nothing but persecuted or harassed. This is the delusion of persecution. So now we are going to the questions to the comment section. Questions. So questions to the viewers are, what is the delusion of control? Firstly, the delusion of control. What is delusion of control? Next is, what is delusion of eratomania? Third is, what is the egg bomb syndrome? Egg bomb syndrome. What is the egg bomb syndrome? So answer these questions in the comment section.